Hi, I'm Jerry Nixon, and this is SQL Tips for Developers, a beginner's guide. I'm on the SQL team for developer experiences, and I'm here with Anaga. She's on the same team as me. Anaga, we're getting started with SQL Server. What do you think we should do next?
I know I have data in my database. What else do we have there?
Inside your database. Good thinking. All right, so let's think about things in terms of the database. So we know SQL Server can have one or more databases, and it's where your data is going to be stored. What do we store it in? We store it in a table. So the table itself is a little bit, in my mind, like an Excel spreadsheet. It has columns and it has rows. Now, columns define the data that you want to store, but rows really are the data you're storing. Let me give you an example. If I have first name as a column, last name as a column, and maybe eye color as a third column, that's defining the data that I want to store. Then when I get to the rows, that's the data I'm storing itself. So for example, the first one might be first name Jerry, that's me, last name Nixon, that's me, eye color green. All right, terrific. Then I go down to the next row and it's Anaga and all of her information, and on it goes. How many rows can you have in a table? I've seen trillions of rows in a table, literally with a T. How many columns can you have? You can have thousands and thousands of columns in a table as well. How many tables can you have in a database? You can literally have hundreds of thousands of tables in a database. That means whatever the requirements are for your application, SQL is there to meet your need. Inside a database, which seems so simple, can be nice and sophisticated and as complex as you need it to be. Now, what if you wanted to see your table, but it's just not formatted the way you want it to? That's where views come in. Views are on top of tables, and we refer to views as a way of projecting your data. So it's a projection of your data into a format that you want it to be. Let me give you an example. You might have a view that is against your users table that doesn't show what the eye color is. So that's a great way, just drops that column completely. So now I've projected the same table into a view, but I've made it look the way I want it to look. Beautiful. That's a view. Then we have, from a developer's point of view, this is the best of everything. So now we have a stored procedure. A stored procedure can take values in, like arguments to a method, but then it can do almost anything the database is capable of doing inside. It's like having a class with multiple methods ready to go and go and go, and it is incredible. And if you want to unleash the power of your database, almost certainly a stored procedure is the place for you to be able to do that. A stored procedure can return data, can return multiple sets of data. Really, a stored procedure is one of the most powerful things you'll find. All right, the last two pieces that really play to the developer story inside a database are functions and triggers. Let me start with triggers. You would put a trigger onto a table. A trigger would run every time a row is interacted with. Is it inserted? Is it deleted? Is it updated? Whatever. I can have a trigger fire every time one of those happens. I can have a trigger fire before it happens. I can have a trigger fire after it happens. It's really up to the developer and how they design it, and I can have that trigger then ensure things are correct or expand them. Let me give you an example. Eye color, I might put green, GRN, as an abbreviation. And you could have a trigger that fires after I insert my data to look for all of those abbreviations like GRN and expand those to be GREEN. Now, you can also have your trigger look for abbreviations that it doesn't recognize. And if it doesn't recognize them, then it prevents the data from being written so that you can preserve the integrity of your database as well by making sure that you have clean data that's not polluted. That's another great feature of a trigger. So again, triggers can run before or after an operation. They can manipulate the data after it's been read or after it's been written, or they can prevent the operation completely. So pretty cool stuff. The last really is the function. The function is more like a method. And it has, just like a method, it also has parameters that you can set the arguments in. And it also has a return value, either a scalar, single value, like 1, 2, 3, or maybe a string. And then it also has a potential to have a table value. We call those table value functions, where it can return something that has columns and rows. really depends on whatever your need is. So a simple example would be like a full name function where you pass in the first name and the last name, and it concatenates those with a space in between and makes all the casing correct and on and on. You've probably even written a method like that. Now I can do it not in my code, but inside the database itself. Right? What's great is when I am manipulating and interacting with my data, I want to do as much as I can inside of the database. So I love the fact that all of these developer capabilities are sitting there waiting for me. If you're wanting to get started with SQL Server, you can go to the Azure portal and create your own SQL, an Azure SQL DB, or you can download SQL Server today at akams/SQL. Best of luck.